Hello, today we'll talk about Angular. Angular is a web framework developed by Google and latest version of Angular written in TypeScript. The history of AngularJS presented on the current slide, but the main changes were brought to the language between first and second version, because second version is fully written using TypeScript. Why TypeScript? So TypeScript is a language developed by Microsoft, a superset of JavaScript, and its main feature is that it's statically typed. This gives you ability to catch a lot of errors, mistakes, and find bugs during compilation phase and not at runtime. Also, Angular provides more clear inheritance, some additional structures like Decorator, and of course modern IDEs have better support of statically typed language and give you autocompletion and better navigation. So let's take a look at the architecture of AngularJS. Today we will talk about such structures of AngularJS, and we will start with ng model. Angular, it's a modular framework, and it's divided into small pieces called modules. Angular supports ES6 modules and also provide structure called ng model. So what is ng model? ng model it's basically a JavaScript class with additional decorator called add ng model with some metadata. In this metadata you can specify other models that you want to import in your model, and you can use components from these imported models. You can specify different kinds of services, additional models that you want to declare and render using your model, and of course you can specify models that you want to export, and other models that will import your model can use these components. Model, as I mentioned, is a base building block and it's entry point of your application. So during startup you need to specify some model. In this example we have app module that we specify in bootstrap phase of application. Angular supports built-in models and you can use them out of the box. And here is example of simple ng model. This example generated using a default example. So in this example we have some models, built-in models like browser, HTTP client, and some custom models like forms model. Also we have some components, most of them are custom components, and we specify that the initial component that we want to render during bootstrap phase is app component. So let's go next. Components. So component is a basic building block of Angular applications. Components can be chained or can build complex structures, like in current example we have root component, header component, list component, item components, and other stuff. So component is also JavaScript class with its own decorator called component, and in this decorator you can specify some additional information like providers or services that you want to use in this component. Component cannot exist without template file. Template file is actually an HTML that you can specify in as a value of template URL. Or you can use inline templates, so you can specify your inline template as a value of template property. So as I mentioned, template it's basic HTML with additional Angular syntax. In this example we have for example ng4 and additional attributes. This give ability to Angular to understand what you need to do and how to render element and what events it needs to support. Example of simple component presented here. So we have only one property called title, and in our HTML class we can specify this property or render this property. Next one is directive. In some cases we want to perform some action with our DOM, and with directive we can use small code written in JavaScript and perform some actions. You can create your own directives or use built-in directives. For example, currently Angular support two kinds of directive. It's structural directives. These directives change DOM structure. For example, in this example we have ng4. It's like a simple iterator over Padovan's collection in controller, and for each element of Padovan's collection we will generate a list element. And also we have attribute directives. This kind of directive doesn't change DOM structure but populate some DOM elements with values and information. For example, in this example we populate input element with hero name. So when we have component and templates, we want to interact between them, and changes from components we want to render them on HTML templates. So this give you without Angular you need to do this by your own. So you need to create some additional JavaScript file, query the DOM, and so on, and so on. Use some additional events, but developers of Angular provide you ability of data binding. So right now it's Angular support three types of data binding, and first one is just, for example, you have a value in component and you want to display it on UI. So you can use two pair of curly brackets and display value on UI. And when this value in component will be changed, this value automatically will be changed on UI. But as I mentioned previously, we can chain our components. We have parent components and child components, and in some cases we want to update child components based on actions on or data from parent components. In this case, you can use property binding, and in current example we have app Padovan detail child element, and we can populate value of this component with value from the parent component called selected Padovan. And of course, in some cases we need to do reverse. For example, we want to update our parent component based on some actions from child component. In this case, you need to use event emitter that supported by Angular, and you can perform or trigger some events, like for example click event, but you can create your own event and populate or call some methods from parent component. In this example we have click event, and based on this event which we call method select Padovan from parent component. As I mentioned, Angular it's modular framework, and developers of Angular decided that they want to split logic related to HTML rendering and other logic. For example, logic that will trigger some services, will perform some login or other stuff, for example calculations and so on and so forth. So they introduced a structure called service. It's also a JavaScript class with some additional logic not related to HTML rendering. And in current example we have a logger class that just print messages in console based on argument. So but we want to connect some services and components. For this, we need such idea called dependency injection. This means that we want to some mechanism that will provide our dependencies to our components and modules. In Angular, this object called injector, and it provides some objects or some services to components. So when component needs some dependencies, it call injector, and injector will check if it already has some service, then it will provide it to component or module. In other case, it will create new instance of this service and only then provide it to component. So how to inject services into components? First, the new way how to do this is to specify provide in attributes in service decorator, and you need to provide where you want to inject your service. You can specify root. In this case, injector will create singleton instance of this service and will provide it to all components that need this service. Or you can specify, for example, module that you want, where you want to provide this service or inject this service. Another way is specify a list of services in model itself, in decorator of model itself, and then this model during startup will be populated with these services, and then it can use these services. And of course, you can specify services in components decorator. That's basically it that I want to show you today. Thank you.